I would like to call to order the regular business meeting of the Newmarket School Board. We'd like to begin this meeting, as we do all our meetings, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Catherine, will you lead us in that?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. We'll proceed with the next thing on the agenda, which is public comment. We don't have anyone from the public in the audience this evening, so we will leave that open. Moving on, I'd like to, with the board's approval, make a couple of amendments to the schedule tonight. The first thing is I would like to finally put to bed the August 24th non-public and public meeting minutes. That one was tough because there were only 3 of us present that night, and then I would like to talk about the addendum that we need to make to the superintendent contract. So if you go into your packet towards the end for the public and non-public meeting minutes of August 24th, I seek a motion to approve those minutes from those 2 meetings.
So moved. Second.
On a motion for Ms. Alberg and a second for Mr. Zink, we approved the non-public and public minutes of the August 24th meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Just one abstention, I wasn't here.
And
Two.
two. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we can get that off our agenda for the final time. The next thing that we need to discuss is the addendum that we need to make to the superintendent contract. As we know, one of our duties is to deal with the negotiation for the contract of the superintendent and address her performance on her performance on an annual basis, and then determine what sort of salary increase is appropriate if there is one for that year. To that end, we're looking at a period of July 1, 2017 for the contract year to July 1, 2018. Just so the public's aware, as a part of our process for evaluating, and I won't go into performance information for Superintendent Nato, but at our retreat, we met with her to review the performance of the past year, July 1, 2016 to July 1, 2017. We thanked her for her hard work during that time and look forward to what the future holds for her and her service to the district and the students in. Now the question becomes, what, if any, increase we give to her salary and amend the contract that way. For the period of July 1 through July 1, 2016 to July 1, 2017, Superintendent Nato's base rate of pay was $130,000 even. And the question becomes, what we would like to, if we would like to provide an increase to her for this current fiscal year. Any thoughts about that anyone has? We can discuss it now, or we can move to a motion if we'd like to, if we feel prepared. We have all provided input for performance in the past for Superintendent Nato. Not that salary and performance should be totally linked because they're 2 separate things, but I think we have all had input on her performance. If anyone would like to say anything, they're free, or if anyone has any thoughts on a percentage increase amount, we can talk about a motion if we'd like.
I think I made my feelings quite clear that I appreciate everything that Meredith has done, and I love the way this district's going right now, and I'm looking forward to the future. I still say I'd like to see some of that money kind of flow downwards a little bit, and that was what I had said earlier.
Okay.
And I still stand by that.
And I guess my perspective is that we went on a pretty diligent search a year ago. We had 41 candidates, I believe, or 41 resumes. There were 2 finalists, and Meredith was clearly the most experienced candidate out of those, and we picked an A player. And we paid a salary that was commensurate with that. I think my own opinion is her performance has been exemplary And I would like to recommend a 3% increase.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
I would.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for Mr. Zink that we would amend superintendent's contract with a salary piece from the current rate of $130,000 to a 3% increase. We would take it to $133,900. A second from Ms. Alberg on that motion. Any discussion further on that?
I concur with what Al said, and appreciate it all, the reasoning that has been expressed, and these aren't black and white decisions necessarily, but I think it's the right thing.
Any further thing?
Yeah, and you know, I don't disagree with Elizabeth's point of view at all. I wish that we participated in a system that really reacted to performance, not just how long somebody's been here. But this is within our purview to do this, and I feel the community and so forth would be supportive of it as well.
One of the things that I appreciate about serving on this board and having the privilege to do it is that we have 5 different people with 5 different perspectives. And I appreciate when we have differences of opinions because it makes me think of things in a different way. And so I appreciate Elizabeth's point of view. I appreciate everyone that's sitting here. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to serve in this way with each of you. So that's an aside. Any other feedback, discussion? Are we prepared to move to a vote on this? The motion on the table is to amend Superintendent Nato's contract to take her base salary to $133,900 for the period of July 1, 2017 to July 1, 2018. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you guys very much. All right, moving along on our agenda. Catherine, will you provide us with your report? Thank you, as I said earlier, for all that you did, and I'm skipping into something that's going to be on future reports, but I'm going to do it anyway. For all the help that you gave us on Monday when Superintendent Robert's here. Commissioner, yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he was never a superintendent.
When the
Good news.
Commissioner of Education was here, you were very much a leader in that process, and we appreciate it very much.
So, the commissioner was here on Monday, and
I took it.
we had a few students meet with him, and it was really cool to be able to ask him questions about the current education system and his plans for the future in it. Generally, on Monday, October 9th, there is no school, as it's Columbus Day, and on Tuesday, October 10th, there's a financial aid night, which parents and students are equally invited to attend.
And that's 6 to 7, right, Catherine, I think?
I believe so. And for the elementary school, the PTA is currently having a fundraiser with Cherrydale. Last orders are being taken tomorrow, October 6th, and the orders will be in by the first week in November.
What is Cherrydale?
They didn't have
It's a company, a fundraising company that has a variety of products that are available through catalog orders and or online orders. So it might be wrapping paper.
Say wrapping,
or-
remember wrapping
Candles.
paper?
Gotcha.
Candles.
Gotcha.
The elementary school cross-country has a meet on October 11th, and that's in Newmarket at 4 p.m. For high school and junior high sports, girls soccer are winning their season 11-1, and their next game is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Boys soccer is winning their season 7-5, and their next game will also be tomorrow at 7 p.m. but at 6 p.m. Unified soccer just started, and their next game is home against Spalding, and that'll be October 11th at 3:30 p.m. Football are winning 3-2 their season, and their next game will be October 13th at Raymond High School at 7 p.m. And for high school cross-country, they will be having a meet October 7th at PCA, 2 p.m., while the junior high will be having a meet October 11th, CMS at 4 p.m. I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Meredith, would you like to proceed with your report?
Sure. So the commissioner was here on Monday.
Was he?
We've
I
all
had no
covered that
idea.
And, sincerely, we appreciate his interest in coming to visit the district and taking the time to spend the day with us and visiting our classrooms and interacting with students and faculty across the district. And he stuck around after school to meet with parents and community members as well. And we had a nice representation there from our community. And he didn't shy away from some tough questions that people wanted to put to him. So again, we appreciate his willingness to engage in that dialogue and thank him for his visit. And I did send him a personal note on Tuesday as well, so on the district's behalf. Let's see, I've got a whole bunch of things on the list. If you have visited the town hall, probably any floor, you may be aware that we are about midway through some office renovations upstairs, as we had discussed some time back. That's about the shared services piece and trying to accommodate shared finance office so that there's an opening to both sides of that office. Also making some space for our facilities director, who, in order to have shared finance space, needed to kind of move across the hall. So it's still a work in progress. We are going to be waiting for the dust, both literally and figuratively, to settle before we finalize any arrangements up there. But I appreciate the patience of the office staff with, as we know, and it's probably a good practice scenario for us, because as we move into construction and renovation at the schools, it might help us to be mindful of those experiences and how to best shield the students from that. So, and faculty, of course. Let's see, we have the financial aid night coming up. We are working on budget calendar, so I would love to get a sense from the board of some November dates and how they might work for you. Our request would be to do an initial presentation to you the week of November, I forget what the Monday is, must be the 6th. And on either Tuesday or Thursday of that night to do an initial budget presentation. To have a workshop the following week, either doing that prior to or after your regular business meeting, or the beginning of that week. And then our hope would be that we're able to adopt a budget on the 20th of November, which is a Monday, so that we are able to turn it around for the budget committee on November 27th.
And I, when I was speaking to Meredith just briefly about this, I felt like, and you guys can chime in here, that the synthesis of the data that we received last year was very helpful and very thorough in terms of where the deltas were and how we were going to address those. And so I've asked for something similar to that again. So we're not, spinning our wheels and things that we can't control, but really looking at the things that we have an impact on and help us determine the budget. So that might help us all.
Meredith, could you do those dates one more time?
Sure. I'm looking for the 7th or 9th of November.
Not the 8th? I thought you said the 8th.
No, the Tuesday or Thursday of that week. I think we were avoiding, I don't know why we were avoiding the 8th, for some reason. The 13th and the 20th.
Oh, good with me.
In those 4 dates are,
Budget.
and we're gonna need all 4?
Not necessarily, but I would rather have more on the calendar and need fewer than be scrambling to find them.
So you're gonna let us know which one, you're just gonna,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking if people have a sense of calendar, whether those work or don't work, and if not, if you could let me know that.
I think that what I have on my calendar is SST outside of the regular time is meeting at 7 o'clock that night, and I think it's their
On the 13th.
legislative, on the 20th.
On the 20th.
And as I recall, I looked back at that, and it's their legislative meeting, and that's probably why that's out of cycle. And I've been looking at my schedule pretty closely because I have a series of doctor's appointments scheduled in that time frame.
Yeah, so I had
Not just down the road, so I can't miss.
So I had the 5 p.m. SST meeting, but you're saying it's at 7 that night, you believe?
I have on here
Okay.
7, but I don't have that,
Okay.
that document in front of me, and I looked at it recently, and I think that's what, I was like, oh, okay, that explains, and I'm good, because I had expected it to be the 13th, and I thought, well, I'm gonna have to change my travel arrangements.
They do meet the 20th, but I believe that's a 5 p.m. meeting,
Yeah.
and so
Okay.
if we were to start at 7, I think we'd be okay.
Should we plan on 7 o'clock meetings on those 4 dates, unless someone has and then we will address it when we get in the thick of it.
That
So
works.
the 7th, the 9th, the 12th, and the 20th.
13th.
13th.
Seventh,
At 7.
say again?
November 7th, 9th, 13th, and 20th at 7.
Okay.
Again, if we wind up needing less of those, that's not a bad thing, but
Thank you.
better safe than sorry.
And that's CIP as well?
CIP has already finalized
Already
their
gone. Mhm.
pieces.
Yeah, they voted last Monday, a week ago Monday.
That's right. Budget calendar. We, as a reminder, will need to appoint a board member for the Health Insurance Exploratory Committee. We also would love to have a board member join us for review of the bids that we received regarding energy efficiencies. And I will reach out to the building committee for a representative for that as well, with the indulgence of the board. It was a joint town and school request for proposals that went out, so the town council has also been asked to provide a member, as well as a department head from the town, and we have a school administrator who's also offered to sit in. So I'm anticipating it's probably 2 or 3 meeting dates. One is to review the proposals, one to interview the firm or firms who have submitted proposals that are of interest to the committee, and the third would be to finalize recommendation to both the council and the board.
Is there any who?
I'd be-
I think I was first, Al, but I'll defer.
I love this.
Yeah, it's like, this is like Jeopardy.
I
I'm gonna have to
I
bring
think I
my-
was first, Mike.
I think I'm gonna have to bring my button.
Yeah,
That was
have-
easy.
But I defer to the chair
We
then.
can do a replay.
Rock, paper, scissors?
I think Mike was by a hair first.
Yeah, but I'd be better at
If Al's dead, so
I will not give any judgment
Right.
of that kind. I'm not going to
Okay.
give any judgment.
He would
All
never
right,
say so
Mike.
in public.
And I'm going to find my button.
We do have these things for
it.
later on.
That's fine.
All right, so Mike, thank you for doing that. And for the health insurance, if there's no one that would fight me for that, I'll do that one.
My schedule's so screwed up.
I'll do it. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Can we go back on that and then just check the recording?
No, I will not.
Instant replay, judges?
I will not.
No replays in this game?
No do-overs. All right. Very sorry.
That's okay. I am trying to flip back to where I was on my calendar because I lost track. But just to keep the board informed of some, last Friday was Teacher Workshop Day. And so, again, Chris will be sharing in a little while and may have some other pieces of news that he wants to share. But I think overall it was a really productive day and a great opportunity for staff to work together and collaborate on some of the big initiatives that we're working on: standards-based reporting, scope and sequence of curricula, for example, some big chunks of our work. So we always value those days, and we look forward to working with the calendar next year to maximize that time for our faculty to work together. I had the great opportunity at the end of last week to hear a couple of speakers at New England Superintendent's Conference. One of those speakers was Bill Daggett, who people may be familiar with him as a business person who sort of moved into the world of education as a result of some of his experiences with his own children, but he does a lot of work around sort of the future of education and 21st century pieces, and was able to share some really fascinating pieces of work going on. Again, no surprise to us, but just a great reminder of the advancements in biotechnology, for example. I do think that, in my children's lifetime, for sure, that, I may have a chip in my arm that sends data to my doctor's office instead of making a trip to the doctor's office on a regular basis. I mean, the technology exists that we can put that kind of information on something like thinner than a piece of 1/100th the width of a piece of human hair. So imagine that for a second. Like, this is the world the students that we have right now in our schools are going into. there's nothing that we're teaching that is fully preparing them for those experiences in terms of content knowledge, but the work in collaboration and designing projects and communicating with other people and problem solving, those skills are going to serve them really well in that adaptive world. He also talked a lot about, the other emerging field of sort of robotics. A lot of the skills and trades that we have today are going to be obsolete. They're going to be replaced by algorithms and 3D printings and, really, again, real changes to some of our way of life and the way that we approach things. When I watched video of a masonry house being 3D printed, can do it in 3 days. A very different world that these students are going into. Robotic framing of, buildings, structures, things that, not that we want to lose the skills and the handiwork and the craft piece, but we also need to be really preparing our students for those design challenges that they're going to face going into the world.
When I was at the last SST meeting and I sat in on the advisory committee for the pre-engineering, the instructor was saying that there are students who are asking for 3D printers for Christmas and they're getting 3D printers.
Oh, absolutely. And you can go online and find directions to build a 3D printer at a very low cost, actually. Yeah.
That's what
My
she was
brother
saying.
is actually working on buying one right now. He's in pre-engineering and he's just amazed with what it can do. So he's
Yeah.
very interested in that.
And we do have a couple in the schools this year for the first time. So, we're looking forward to what students are going to be able to do with those tools.
It's not
they
less
step into
jobs
it.
either, it's just different jobs.
That's right.
In fact, there was an article on NPR coming in tonight that said that, with every technology change, it generally creates more jobs.
Yeah.
So I just gotta make sure they're doing the right things.
Yeah, but it's important, I think, for us to remind ourselves of the fact that this is the work we're doing for kids. It's happening in real time, and the careers that we all have enjoyed are not going to be the same careers that all of them enjoy as they move forward, and to just be mindful that we're sort of following those trends. Anyway, I won't belabor that much further. It was a great day. See, coming up, so that I don't miss anything big, Catherine already mentioned there's no school on Monday, and we have members of our administrative team going to a leadership conference next Friday and on their time next weekend as well. So that's an exciting opportunity, and we'll talk about the NCEP grants, but that's a contributor to that piece for us as well. And yeah, we're almost to the midterm, believe it or not.
It's going quickly. It always does.
And budget will be here before we know it. So I will stop there.
Perfect,
My little
thank
tidbits
you.
for today.
Any school board committee reports from any of the meetings that anyone's gone to?
Just our budget meetings those are going to be ramped up as well, and of course I didn't bring the schedule. Did you bring it?
I did not bring it, but I probably have most of them on my calendar. They are not meeting the end of this month. I
No.
think their first meeting's in early November to review the town budget.
Say second, right?
I think so, the 12th, somewhere around there, the second Monday in November, and they have a couple meetings to review the town budget, and then their first review of the school budget will be the 27th of November, and they have given us the calendar, or proposed calendar of public hearing dates,
Okay.
Yes.
deliberative session, so I think they were sharing that with the town administrator for his review.
Okay.
And once that's finalized, we'll definitely convey that all
Thank
to
you.
you with a full budget calendar.
Perfect. Any other committee reports from anyone?
Can I just give an update on facilities
Yes.
and the work? So we've been, over the last couple months, in this, what's called the design development phase, which is a lot of work going on kind of behind the scenes with engineers, geotechnical work, the mechanical, the structural, the electrical, the plumbing. Deadlines for all of those drawings were the end of September. It's not yet the end of October. That was, getting ahead of myself. We're the end of September. So there's been a lot of back and forth and sharing of information, but again, we are still in preliminary phase work here. So we have received, as of yesterday, the detailed page-by-page drawings of every room in both buildings with every electrical outlet and every exhaust fan and all of those pieces. So we are just beginning the review process of those. Greg and I did for a period of time, but met with the architects yesterday to review that. So we'll be bringing all of that to the building committee. We hope to review all of those plans for both buildings in some detail at the meeting on October 18th. The committee then will get cost estimates from Ekman Construction on the 1st of November. And so that's kind of the next meeting where the committee is going to be then saying, okay, is what we have in these drawings, what we want to move forward with, having the opportunity to take a look at all of that, and again, coming back to the board with recommendations. And then we'll go out to bid those pieces. So we've still got a fair amount of work to do, but this last couple months has been sort of that limbo period as all that behind the scenes work of, we've talked about the asbestos testing, we've talked about the geotechnical work and the soil borings that needed to be completed. So all of that work has been happening and then sort of converging in that set of drawings that was finalized last week. So again, some big steps coming forward, but we're excited about where we are and kind of anxious to get to that November 1st meeting so we can see where things stand and that next cost check.
So nothing, just so the board knows, nothing has been, this is very much preliminary, nothing has been decided in terms of design. We're simply not there yet in terms of a design. And just to reiterate, the board and really for the public's benefit, I mean, it's sort of an information gathering and assembling phase right now. Meredith and Greg are working hard on that. It'll bubble up eventually on November 1st to something that the building committee can actually take a look at. We'll probably spend a lot of time looking at that. And the building committee serves obviously at the board's pleasure and simply as advisory. We won't be making any decisions. We will make recommendations and at some point, probably in November, and provide the board with sufficient information up front so you can intelligently review it and ask questions. And but as I'm sitting here thinking about it and seeing all the meetings we have about budget in November, it's going to be a busy month because I suspect it's going to take the building committee a while to sift through all this stuff, and the board will spend a fair amount of time, I would think, too, going through it, just so you can understand it and make sure we're doing what we set out to do.
And I think as a building committee member, any of the materials that we can review in advance, just like you do with this material, would really be helpful. And an agenda that is pretty specific in terms of what the members should come to that meeting expecting in terms of new information and decision-making. It helps, I know it does with me, to get the agenda so I can get my head in gear. So if it's an issue of topography or sewers or whatever, if we get our heads glued on that issue before we come, with as much background information.
But I think it's also important, I think, to recognize the work that's going on behind the scenes. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that Meredith and Greg are doing on a daily basis that we don't see, in terms of getting information from all the engineers and Ekman and having phone calls and it's a ton of work. It really is. So, I think we'll have something really good to show the board in November. And we'll start to come together.
And, again, just to reiterate, I mean, we had some pretty good parameters laid out by the committee in the past that the board approved, and then the price sort of scope of the project was approved. So we are remaining within that scope, absolutely. We haven't reached outside of that, nor is that our intention, but we want to be really sure that we have locked in all of those details at this stage of the process. So we're getting close to that point and being ready to make some decisions about any variances and then launching into the next step. it feels April will be here before we know it to break
Exactly.
ground
It
of
will.
our buildings.
The board will have to make some choices ultimately, you know, and so all of those variables are being worked up and, you know, we'll present some
Right.
choices, because there is a limited budget, but we'll have to make some choices along the way.
And this would be an absolutely impossible task without Greg and Meredith. The building committee could not do what they're doing, so.
I remembered why November 8th was open on our calendar, and that's because that's when we have the abutters meeting with our neighbors at the elementary and junior, senior high school.
Good, all right.
Okay. And yes, as Mike said, November is filling up quickly, so thank you in advance for all of that.
Well, so we might even want to look at, if we do have all that, we actually might want to look at a Saturday. And just, if we can get the budget taken care of, we could maybe just spend a Saturday and go over.
I mean, I think I'm optimistic. If we have a similar situation to what we had last year in terms of a concise budgetary outline, I think it'll probably be less time than we're anticipating at this point. But I
Yeah.
think that's definitely something we should keep in mind if it proves to be otherwise.
And I think,
With Meredith
you know,
and
as far as your budget process goes, I think there's a lot less to consider this year.
Right.
It's operating
Mhm.
budgets, not, you know,
Right.
project, so.
but we'll just keep that in mind,
Yeah,
everyone.
that's what we're hoping, so it's.
Yeah, and we certainly could consider at some point a joint meeting with the building committee that we did before to review,
Might be
you know,
effective.
some
Good
of those
idea.
decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might not be a
Yep.
bad
No,
idea.
Yeah.
that would be an excellent idea,
Right.
to disseminate the information simultaneously
Yeah.
and give us more time to process it, I think.
Good
So-
idea.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else from committee reports? All right, moving along, our next item is approval of the policy that we had for first reading at last meeting. As we reviewed them and Meredith went through them the last time, I don't feel like we need to do that a second time. Does anyone have any input on any of the policies that are listed?
I was rereading the computer policy and I thought just some clarification on item number 6.
Okay.
I mean, early on, it clarifies that these are school or district-owned computers, but then in number 6, it says, and all information on an employee's computer system or messages created, received, or sent over the electronic mail system for any purpose. Maybe to make sure that the employee's workstation computer, because I'm sure that's what it means, not the employee's computer at home. And I identify that because working for the federal government, we had to use our ID card with our chipped ID card to get in the last year I was working. And if we wanted to send anything from our home computer, like I would do my lesson plans if I were sick, I'd send in my sub plans to my computer. I had to be able to CAC card into my home computer, and I had to get a government CAC card reader.
So employees can't log into the district network from home. They can access our email
Right.
from home. And so it would only be the email that would be accessible from home, or if they're using a district device.
So you're-
And again, just to be really clear about this, and there's, I'm sure Mike could go into probably far greater detail, but having, had my law trainings updated recently as well, you have to have cause, right? I can't just randomly
Right.
search employee email, nor would I want to, or have the time to.
I understand about the email, but is number 6 saying that the computer that the employee purchased with their own personal funds and they have in their home and they work with their home?
No, it's the district's computer system, so it would be either using a district device or the district's network access to include
So
email.
I would put in there the employee's district computer system, just to add that word to make that clear. But if I'm the only one that's not clear to, it's because I come at it from a very different.
Because couldn't someone get on the Gmail on any device that they have
Sure.
and
so we
still
can
send an email?
Yeah.
So
it
we would
has to be.
search your email
Right,
account.
Right,
It's
not
just
your
like
personal
anything. If I
computer.
send a
Right.
text
it's the email and not the
regarding the
machine that
board,
we-
that's
Right.
all public information.
And it goes back to, somebody could check this one then.
Yep.
Yep, that's why we always say you send emails through your school one.
But if they would have access to even my Yahoo, that's my personal
No.
email, is what you're saying?
No,
Just a school
just your
email.
Gmail.
Yeah, but you don't wanna get caught.
Right.
I'm fine with that change to say on the district's computer system, or messages created, received, or sent over the
That's good.
electronic mail system for any purpose. That's a fine change.
On the district.
That's how I understood it, but if that helps to
Right.
clarify, I have no
And
issue
I
with that.
just didn't know, because I said my background was
Yeah.
different.
Any other changes to any of the policy? Any other thoughts? If not, I seek a motion to approve the policy that we've discussed with the amendment that we just made.
So moved?
Second?
On a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Kennison to approve the policies as listed with the one amendment. All those in, any discussion?
Hang on a minute. So the policies we're referring to,
Our computer security, email communications, non-educational surveys and questionnaires, non-educational questionnaire surveys and research. That's the same one. One is being recommended for deletion, and then modification of weapons expulsion.
So Al, these might have been read after, or?
Yes.
They were read
left?
after you left the
Okay.
last time.
okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
All those in favor of approving them with the one amendment?
Aye.
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 Approved. All right, the next thing is going to be a data presentation by the data manager, Amy Rossi. Amy, if you could come on up, we would appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
And Assistant
And
Superintendent
Assistant
Andruski.
Superintendent Andruski, sorry.
I'm at the end.
We had to turn you on over there too.
Yes. This is how we're doing.
I guess I'll have to stand here and just use the manual. I'm just gonna move the mic over, Amy, just to make sure. Okay. I can just use my teacher voice, right?
Hopefully it will pick up.
Thank you very much for having me here. We looked at it was the new PD piece that Chris shared with you. And in that document was just a whole long list of assessments. And it was pretty confusing. It explained each one and how they were used and all of that. But because it was in a really long laundry list, I really felt that it would be great for you to have a little different format of what our assessments are and how we use them, when we use them, and what we have for some results for you as well. So I purposely called this the assessment tools in our district because these are just not tests that we give to our students so that they can feel like they've ended a piece of their instruction. It's not just to look at the numbers that come out from it, but we use these tools in order to change our instruction to make sure that we're giving the best to all of our students and giving them what they need. So this is a different look of our assessments. And what you'll see along this side and both pages that list the assessments is classroom formative assessments. Besides the summative assessments that we give on a regular basis, usually benchmark times, fall, winter, spring, the classroom teachers are assessing smaller pieces of their teaching on a regular basis. So they might give weekly spelling tests, as an example. So you wouldn't want to teach students a whole bunch of words and then wait from fall to winter to assess those, because you need to make sure that the kids are learning the smaller pieces and that you can move on to your next unit of instruction. So they're doing that on an ongoing basis. The pieces that I'm going to be talking more with you about are our summative assessments. So we start, I really wish this pointer worked. We start up at the top with the assessments that are being used in our preschool program. The state requires an assessment, and that assessment's given towards the end of the year. But we have just started about a year ago an assessment called the PALS assessment that gives the preschool teachers a chance to assess the kids after they've been in school for maybe a couple of months. It's a long assessment, but they can do it once in the late fall, and then they do it again in the spring. And that way, they have a much better handle on what the kids in preschool are learning. And this assessment is not just reading and math. This is their ability to hold a pencil, their ability to do just being in school and being able to listen and being able to attend, and things that are more of on an oral basis, or things that they're observing versus, as later when they start writing.
Yeah, I was just to say, I mean, that's an important point. It's not like we're having our preschoolers sit down and take paper pencil tests. We do have them draw a picture of themselves, because knowing what kinds of details they include gives us some insight into their development as well as their motor functioning. We want to see what letters they can identify. We ask them to write their name. Do they know the letters in their name? Do they know some of them? Those are all pieces that sort of help us understand where they are on that developmental continuum. And that's what all of this is. It is a developmental continuum. And the requirements of the assessment kind of grow along with the students. So,
yes.
I was thinking, as I was listening to it, if you could explain the difference between formative and summative. I think those are terms that to the layperson are probably unclear.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, in the formative assessments, they're ongoing by the teacher, so they're looking at smaller chunks.
How do they compare to what maybe our parents are used to having, an end of the chapter history test, an end of the week spelling test? How does a formative assessment compare to those things that are ongoing, that a parent might have known as an ongoing testing or appraisal that was done during a semester? How does formative compare to that as compared to a final exam at the end of the semester, or whatever the standardized test is?
Well, so if you were to say use an end of unit exam as a summative assessment because it sums up the end of a unit, a formative assessment may be, say if there was they were working on a writing piece, and a formative assessment may be anecdotal information that the teacher is collecting when they're conferencing with a student, as an example. That's not a summative, it's not the end of a writing unit, it's taking a look, going along the way. So that, I would say, is an example.
yeah, I think that's a good example. I mean, I think the intent of a formative, as we understand it, is to say we're checking on how they're doing along the way, so we can tailor our instruction to help them meet the proficiencies or competencies, the expectations that we have for the end. So I might sort of check on your math progress. Maybe I'm going to give you a math quiz, but that's a formative assessment because I'm checking to see how much you know. We think of a test, probably an end-of-unit test, more as that summative piece, but it's still more discrete summative, right? It's not trying necessarily, an end-of-year exam would be sort of the big picture summative, trying to capture your performance on a whole bunch of standards as opposed to a few.
So a formative assessment is those kinds of checks that teachers were doing along the way
Mhm.
that
That's right.
our parents might have had. Yeah, oh, that was the quiz that she had, or when I had to sit with her when I was doing my my term paper in. She checked to make sure I had all my cards in for all of my subjects.
That's right. It's progress, right?
It's a progress kind of thing, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
parents understand. It's a new term for those kinds of things that they may have been doing previously.
Right, and I think it helped me to remember that it's informal, it's formative, but it's informal, so it's informing instruction on a more daily basis. Okay. So, one of the things that I've come to know much better than before I was data manager, is that our assessments are vertically aligned. Much as we're trying to make sure that all of our curriculum is vertically aligned, our assessments are also vertically aligned. So as we go from preschool into kindergarten, the kindergarten has informally been using a version of the PALS assessment, just as the preschool has. It has different skills that it tests. It goes from maybe recognizing letters is one, so there's like a little bit of a crossover, but then they may be asked to recognize lowercase and uppercase letters, so it starts stepping up a little bit. They would be asked to look at a picture and know the first sound of the item in the picture. So it starts stepping up what the things are that the students are assessed. And then it moves, our regular benchmark assessments for fall, winter, or spring, are reading foundation and math foundation skills. And I'm just gonna move forward and I'll go back again.
When you say vertically aligned, do you mean that the test in the prior year can be compared to the next year's test, so you can see from year to year to year?
Yes. So there's always some overlapping skills from year to year, but as we go into the next step, you'll see that you start having less and less foundation skills, because hopefully by the time get further up into second and third grade, your foundation skills are the student's foundation skills are solid, and it starts moving into the next step.
Mhm.
So vertically aligned from grade level to grade level, to make sure we're catching all of the needs. Yes, and skills.
Do parents get to observe this particular process for their kids?
The actual, the students taking the assessment?
Sure. So, I mean, if in that vertical line you talked about, can the parents follow that too and say, Johnny he's not working well on identifying capital letters? Or do they get to understand this, or is this
Yes.
just what the teacher uses to teach?
Both.
Both?
Yes.
Okay.
And the teachers go over the assessment results with parents.
They do?
Yes.
Okay.
There are parent-teacher conferences every year in the fall. And it's right before the first report card. And, or actually it's when they hand out the first report card. And there are not assigned times after that, but the results can go, the parent can go over the subsequent results at any time with the teacher. If there are any concerns whatsoever, there would be a parent conference and going over the results and explaining how they work and what it means for the student.
But it's not so obvious that their parent could view a report.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it is.
Some
Yeah.
things certainly
Oh, it is.
could
Oh,
be.
okay.
Some things certainly could
Oh,
be,
okay.
and often a parent will express their concerns about a particular thing they're noticing at home.
Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay. Gotcha.
absolutely.
Gotcha.
And,
Okay.
and none of these are in total isolation either. If a parent has a concern about something that they're seeing at home, we can take one of these assessments, and depending upon what's being seen, we may go up or down the ladder and decide, well, what assessment do we need in order to take a look at this and get some data to see, is this something that needs to be a concern? Is it something that maybe we just need to assist with in a small amount of time?
Okay.
Or is it something more serious that we want to help with on a regular basis?
Yeah.
So absolutely.
That's another important point. I think these are not fully diagnostic. They really
Right.
give us brief snapshots, but if we have a concern or if a parent has a concern, then we have the opportunity to do some digging, right? Using some different tools, asking some questions in some cases, having a dialogue with the parents about what they're seeing to figure out what the need for interventions might be. But this sort of raises a flag for us to say, boy, this child might need some more support, or boy, this child needs some enrichment, because they're, way ahead of where we might have expected them to be at this stage.
So I moved ahead a slide just so that you can see. I think this is something that's important to understand. When we're talking about foundation skills for reading and math, they're very basic skills. And these are in order in the way that the student, the level that they are for the student as they're learning it. And one of the things that surprised me before I had any knowledge of teaching reading was that the first sound of something is what you learn before you learn the letter name. You might learn the ABC song, the alphabet song, but if you see the letter written, you probably don't know what it is, even though you can say the alphabet. It's very different knowledge. So the sounds and then the letter naming, then phoneme segmentation is being able to take a word and break it up into its individual sounds. And nonsense words is to be able to read something that's not a word that's familiar, but be able to read it because you understand how to read the sounds.
So segmentation is b-at,
Mhm.
but a nonsense word would be dat, right? Not a real word, but I know enough about those other pieces to be able to put that word together.
And then similarly with math, oral counting, again, that is a skill you can count, probably count to 100 before you really can look at a piece of paper and understand what the number is that you're looking at. So it's oral counting, then understanding what the number is when you look at it. Quantity discrimination, you know which number is larger than the other or smaller than the other. And then missing numbers, being able to look at a series of numbers with one missing and know that if it's 14, 16, that 15 goes in the middle. That's a complex skill when you're starting to learn about numeracy. So these are things that we're helping our students learn, and if indeed they move forward past these skills and they're working on a piece of paper with a whole bunch of math problems and they're really struggling with it, we have to go back and figure out what that is. So we can always go back, no matter what grade the student is in, go back. We give them these same skills and say, okay, where's the problem? Where's the student having trouble with one of these foundation skills or more than one of these foundation skills that we can support in order to help them be more successful? And same with reading. Back. So the first couple of grades are primarily foundation skills that the kids are working on, but starting with first grade, not in the fall, but in the winter, we start introducing how can these students now take those skills and put them together and read a short passage, as an example. How can they take those foundation math skills and look at a piece of paper that has math problems on it and be able to compute them? So there's a mixture of that in first grade. In second grade, right in the fall, we have our last foundation skills that we give the kids, and then they move on to being able to use those skills to actually read, to use those math foundation skills to be able to do math.
Amy, I think I'm seeing a mix of assessment tool names in there with process things. And it might help parents who don't recognize that Diebel's Next is the name of an assessment tool, to know which of those are assessment tool names, because somebody may be saying, geez, talk about nonsense words.
So thank you, you're right about that. Diebel's Next is the name of the assessment, which is English Language Arts Foundation Skills. Ames 10 is the name of the assessment that is math foundation skills. And then once you pass that, it's reading fluency, which is being able to read words with
But that's
the
not the
speed
name
and
of the test.
accuracy.
No.
Right.
Okay.
Speed and accuracy, and then math computation. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Folks,
Yeah, so the ones up there, you're right, have
Understand.
names. Right. Okay. Once we get to third grade, I've heard it said many times, and probably many people have also heard this, when you get to third grade, you're reading to learn instead of learning to read. So when we get to third grade, what kind of shows that is we start a test that we have, which is Northwest Assessment, NWEA, which goes the next step. So previously, they've had reading fluency, which helps us measure the speed and accuracy of their reading, which means that they're able to take all of those foundation skills and read. And in math, they're able to compute numbers. The Northwest Assessment takes it a step further. They need to be able to read, but then the Northwest Assessment shows us how they can comprehend, identify parts of a story, make predictions, all components of literacy. In math, it then takes those, instead of just having math problems, you may have word problems. And you have to be able to, the student has to be able to think about, okay, so he's going to the market and he's traveling this many miles at this many miles per hour. How do I figure that out? So that takes a lot more complex skills to be able to solve a math word problem than it would be to have a piece of paper with a math problem on it.
And it also includes literacy skills.
Yes.
Which can sometimes confuse the real math performance if we're not looking carefully.
Right. Absolutely. So there's lots of components that we have to make sure that we're looking at. And in fact, if we know a student has difficulties with reading, then we take that into account when we're giving them a math assessment. So we may help them with the reading component in order to take that piece away from their ability to do math. So if someone reads it to them, they still are showing that they can understand how to turn those words into a math problem. So lots of things to take into account, definitely many layers. So in third, fourth, and fifth grade, the assessments are pretty similar. Oh, I forgot to add our New Hampshire assessment, which up through this year, for the last 3 years, has been the Smarter Balanced Assessment. And the Smarter Balanced Assessment, similar to the Northwest Assessment we talked about, it measures much more complex skills, but in a much broader fashion and with more rigor and more components, such as there's a listening component to the Smarter Balanced Assessment. So there's more to that one, and that would be our state assessment. These other assessments are district assessments. The other addition, which previous to this year was in fourth grade, was the New Hampshire science test. So that we have a science test starting this year. That test will be given in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. Previously, it was 4th, 8th, and 11th. Any questions about the elementary school section before I move on? Okay, now we're into junior high and senior high. You might notice that things look a little more empty up there. One of the things that it's not necessarily that much more significant last time, when you were looking at the the lower elementary school grades, where there are a lot of things up there, those assessments are much shorter in time. So if you're doing the foundation skills, you're testing those 4 foundation skills and it only takes a few minutes per skill. So though it looked like a lot of things, the amount of time was not that great. In our junior high school, we are using the Northwest assessment as we do in the elementary school. What is missing up there is the reading fluency and the math computation. At this point, reading fluency, if by 4th grade, 5th grade, students are reading at a rate that's considered the national norm, there's really no reason for them to have to go faster. And in fact, that's where some of us, I'm sure, in this room, read more slowly or more quickly than others. My 2 kids, one was read like crazy or reads like crazy. The other one read very slowly, but their comprehension levels were basically the same. So, once we have the skill to read at a fluent rate, fluent doesn't necessarily mean fast. Okay? So there's really no need at that point to use those types of assessments unless the student is in need of some additional support. And then we might go back, as I said with the foundation skills, we would move backwards in order to give support to a student to say, okay, where is it that we need to help this support the student? So through the junior high school 3 years, the assessments are the same, the NWEA, and then the New Hampshire assessment, and as I said, the science assessment also is in 8th grade. When we go from junior high to senior high, we have the next transition, and in 9th grade, we're currently assessing, whoops, oh, I forgot about this piece, I'll come back to this. Where is it? There. That's a transition, this is a transition piece we use in 9th grade as kind of a transition from the assessments that we use in elementary school and in junior high to more of a college board type assessment. So this assessment, the ACT Aspire, is what we've been giving in our 9th grade year in order to test the college and career ready skills.
Is it a similar assessment? I know the ACT is different from the SAT, but is it a math-focused test and a oh, it's all
Yeah,
there.
it's right.
Hello, yes.
English, reading, writing, science, and math.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
So
is one of the things we're looking at, though, because the state test is the SAT for our juniors.
Right.
So will it be more helpful to instead give them the
The
PSAT
SAT, yeah.
at 8, 9, and 10 so that they can track? I mean, that's one of the questions that we're looking at it.
You know, and I
as
think
well.
even, if you look at that, even in some children, 6, 7, if people are at
Oh,
a
sure.
point to take those tests, to get the people on a different side of the spectrum, the growth that they desire as well.
Sure, and there are, based on some assessment results, there are certainly places where those flags can also go up. I mean, there are, Johns Hopkins, for example, does a national talent search program where they will allow students, encourage students at the middle school level to take the SAT and for, certain level of performance there can qualify them for some additional opportunities that you might not be aware of necessarily, but that's part of our job is to help people be aware of those.
we
Is
started
the,
using the ACT before the SAT became the state test.
Okay.
We have the school day test now for
Right.
SAT, which was not done previously. And
Could I ask a
You had a
question?
badge?
not enough space.
Is the assumption that, see if I can say this correctly, that the student that is not headed to college, but maybe headed to a career that doesn't require college, are the same readiness skills presumed to be needed for that person?
Yes.
So math skills, reading skills, the
Yeah.
presumption is they'd be applied differently but still needed.
Yes, absolutely.
At the same level?
At the levels that we are teaching it, what happens in junior and senior high school is that the types of courses that are offered vary.
Right.
So that's where you may, for instance, accounting is one of the options available in math in, is it high school? So that might be something that I'd say, I don't need accounting, you know, I know enough about math to take care of what I need to take care of, but then someone who may be interested in being, you know, going into accounting would take that type of math.
I get that. My question, though, is the things that we're testing for an SAT, and I think you've already.
Okay, SAT, okay.
Yep.
Or that kind of put that in your brain, that the competence for somebody headed into a career, or the
Mhm.
competence
Yes.
headed into college, it's the same things that need to be measured.
So, yes, the
College.
proficiency level set by the state on the SAT is not that you have to get an 800, right? That's not, that's substantially above proficient, but the proficiency level set by the state on the SAT is the expectation for all kids, no matter what their future plans are. And the SAT has changed over the years, but one of the, you know, the math, for example, used to be kind of algebra 2 level primarily. It is now algebra 1 level primarily, because they believe that's the foundational skill that everybody needs, whether they're going directly into career or going to college and then going into career. So that proficiency level, again, the state, if you can see what the state averages are, and when Amy shows you a couple slides later on, you'll see where they say proficiency is. But that expectation is for all kids.
And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I've often heard, you know, I'm going to be a mason or a mechanic, and I don't need algebra.
I may have also heard that, but I will tell you that if you go over to SST and talk to folks in the building trades program or the automotive program, they want their students to have those algebra
Yeah.
skills. Either in doing the measurements and angles and calculating or running a business, you know, running the business end of things, that those skills are critical for future success, and that algebra proficiency is a predictor. It's been correlated as a predictor of future success.
And then we have different
Yeah.
levels. So you have academic and you have college prep. So maybe you don't need to take the college prep algebra, but you might want to take academic, just so you have the basics.
The standards are the same.
Yeah.
The pace might be different, and the depth of application might be different, but the standards are the same.
So the endorsement is, or the proof is, if you're going to be an auto mechanic, algebra is assists you in doing that.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha, okay.
And I really think that, you know, when.
True.
It's like a-
Catherine's comment, you can repeat it, I won't
Yeah.
repeat it for
Just
you.
learning how to think critically as well. You might not need the math skills specifically that you learn in algebra, but learning how to think through the problems.
Right.
Gotcha.
And just getting those core standards instead of, you might not have to know what the equation of a line is, but just knowing how to find that kind of goes into a different part of your mind and
Gotcha.
allows you to think in a different way that can be applied in other ways.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go backwards for a minute because before we get into some more high-level assessments, I'd like to emphasize the use of these assessments. So digging deeper is something that we're always working on with assessments. And digging deeper means that if a student maybe is struggling with a particular skill, what are we going to do to really pinpoint that skill? Where are we going to find something in a large assessment, maybe a higher level assessment? How are we going to find out where that student may need some additional support? And conversely, what about the student that is just so far above everybody else in the class in a particular skill? How do we find out where that student is so that we can provide them with an enriching experience that will help develop their skills where they are? So this is going to bring us to the Northwest Assessment site. Oh, and of course, it doesn't have my, okay. When you have things in your computer and you have all the passwords and usernames saved,
It's a test, Amy.
and you can imagine how many I have.
We all have been right where you are right now, and it's not a fun place to be. Like, which one is
Reset?
Forget password?
Watch
Not
your
password.
password every time.
There are some,
That's what I
there
should
are
name
some
it every
very
time.
secure apps that are
That's a good
really
idea.
helpful for
Equifax
password
has a-
management.
Yeah.
has a nice
Yeah,
app.
I would not recommend that one, but
I like his every
I
time.
did it!
you did it.
I'm done.
Okay, so this is the website for the NWEA, which we're starting next week at the elementary school. And what I'd like to show you is one of the particular reports that we can look at that will gives a tremendous amount of information. And this particular assessment company has a lot. This is called the Learning Continuum. Okay, and I am going to, glasses might be helpful.
We have extras.
Always good to know, always good to know.
We're gonna keep a stash up here.
Several of us are carrying at least 2 pair.
Let's do this. All right, so just so that you know, I'm pulling up a class in order to show you how this works. So I'm going to be flying through any information that has a student name. Okay. So when I bring up this report, the first thing it's going to ask me is how I want to display the information. And this is one of the fabulous pieces of this report. I can group the students in this class by the Common Core standards. Okay, so and we at the elementary school, we prepare standards-based report cards, so they are being graded and assessed and taught with the Common Core standards. So it's nice to be able to link that. Now, I may have, though I'm looking at a 5th grade class, I may have some students that are working at a lower level, and I may have students that are working at a higher level. So what I've just done is asked it to look at the grade level standards for all of those grades, not just the 5th grade. And let's look at algebraic thinking. Not necessarily that they're doing algebra, but that they understand algebraic thinking. And close this. So what you're seeing here, I don't know how much you can see now, the algebraic thinking standards start in 3rd grade. So you're seeing some 3rd grade standards, 4th grade standards kind of mixed in here. And on this side is where these students line up. And one of the benefits of this for the teachers is that they can group their students based on their levels, so that you can have maybe 4 groups working in your classroom, but the work that they're doing is based upon their abilities. So, as I said, I'm going to just go through here, and when they get to students, don't be surprised when I fly through them. But it'll give you an idea. See, there's a group of students.
So, and that's basically what we
There's
want
a
to
group
use
of
all this for.
students.
It's just so that we could
we do
see the
use it.
individual students.
Exactly. There's a group
So we
of
group our
students.
instruction.
There's a group of students. Okay? And then, yeah, so the ones that we just passed are the ones that are up, and, because this is the 2 to 5th grade test. So it adapts up into 6th grade. And in some cases, in some of these areas, it adapts higher than that as well.
Now, Amy, as a classroom teacher, would I have access to this data to apply in my classroom?
Yes. Yes, in fact,
And
we.
access to a data manager if you didn't
Exactly.
understand it.
Right. Yeah, this, it's certainly been a process. I've only been aboard as the data, this is my fourth
Sixth.
year? Fourth year. So for 3 years, feels like forever now. For, for the last 3 years, the first was me being able to make sure I understood all of the different components of these assessments. And this is, this NWEA has been really great about ramping up the things that they make available to us, make the tools better. This tool originally only was available through RIT, which is what they call their levels in their assessments, but they have since linked all of their areas to the Common Core standards. You can also, if we were using different standards, we would be able to have them work and link to those. So this gives us, and that's why I say tools, because this is a fabulous tool for
Really
us
is.
to use. And it has the same thing in the reading, it has all the different categories, and also shows the different standards. We are using it with one student right now who's very advanced and trying to figure out, okay, where is that student?
I was just
What's
gonna
gonna be
ask
the
about
most
that.
effective thing? So I was actually able to open up all of these and then print the whole report, and we could go through every single component in math and see what grade level that student is on.
I'll say teachers have grouped students for
Yeah.
years, right? The challenge has been that sometimes we miss things, right? Or sometimes we have blind spots to things, or sometimes we've made an assumption about a child based on one day's piece or a particular unit's work and we've sort of sentenced them in a way to a particular level of instruction for a longer period of time. These tools make sure that doesn't happen. They're a check on us, right? They don't take over the judgment of the teacher because that's
Right.
critical, right? They bring the training and the expertise. This is a tool, though, that helps us make good instructional decisions for kids and all of our kids.
And I think it would be a benefit to have a conversation with the parents quantitatively to say,
Absolutely.
these are the areas that you're struggling in or are advanced in, and these are the things that we're gonna do to help your child get to where he or she can be.
There is no intervention of any kind, whether it be to support in lower ends of the curriculum or upper ends of the curriculum, that happens without a discussion from, with the parent, or at least permission from a parent so that they're well aware before anything happens.
And then we're gonna be able to support the ones that are more advanced. We're gonna be able to continue to support them, come out through high school and.
What does the parental information report piece from that look like? I mean, the system I worked in used the Terra Nova, and there was a report that came to me as a parent so that I could see how my daughter was doing. What does the parental report from this look like? Or is there any parental report?
Yes, I just got permission from a
Show one.
parent
Oh,
to show
okay.
one. And actually, I have another parent here to show one. Mine
So you can show
has
mine.
since gone, so,
Don't tell her.
Yeah.
whoops. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. All right, well, let's just go back to this and go right back
I mean,
on.
if you don't want to show me the actual report.
I can show you
How
an
is-
actual
how's it
report.
going?
It's,
How's
it's
it-
much better to show.
How is the information reported out to parents so that they grasp what the teacher is using to,
Let me just show you.
And honestly, I've
I'd
always
like
gone
to-
to the
I'd like to
teacher.
show you,
The
Ingrid.
first time I saw one, I had no idea what I was looking at. It scared the bejesus out of me. And I was able to go to somebody and have it explained to me, which has always been so nice.
And I think that's always an area we can continue to improve upon. I think Amy's saying she's been, in her role 4 years. I think her learning curve has been
Right,
significant, and that of our teachers is also
Yeah.
significant. And the more comfortable they are with these assessment tools, the better able they are to engage in that dialogue with parents. And I think we've made a lot of progress on that front, is my understanding, over the last few years.
And I guess the other question I would ask that would go along with that is, I appreciated when I was working with preschool, the timing on our assessment and that report was always such that I had that report to give to the parent at parent conference.
Yep.
So they could,
And that's
everybody
how
was
it works
scheduled
for
to see
here
it.
as well.
Okay.
Yep.
But I know that the Terra Nova came out when the Terra Nova had a chance to,
So the beauty
Send the
of these
results and it was
assessments
mailed to me in the mail.
today is they do them digitally and we have those results same day.
wow.
Oh, yeah, NATO, that's right. I was thinking, what's that last name again?
Oh, sorry. I wasn't watching what you were doing.
What I love seeing too, Amy, is this year would be the first time we're actually seeing from the kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, right? Because this is our third year, so I'm watching 2014, 2015, 2017, full-day kindergarten. Look at all those pioneers.
Okay, so, these reports, the
You got
first, the
settled.
fall version of the NW, they call it the MAP
We're
report,
not digital native too.
comes out in a perfect time for us to be able to go over it at parent conferences, the fall parent conferences, or for the first report card. And this report can be run a couple of ways. My favorite way is to do the line graph, because I think it gives you a really nice graphic representation of how the school year has gone for a student. This particular student, this was their first year in Newmarket Elementary School. And so things may have been a little bit different. And this was something I might ask the parent, that the growth line here was a little more shallow than the growth line here. The other thing I know about myself as a learner, I used to get to know the teacher and what their expectations are. And so I know that for myself, and this may be similar to this student, that they take a little time to get comfortable and understand what all of the expectations are, and then take off.
It's hard to see from here. Is that over what period?
This is fall, winter, spring.
And the blue line is what?
The blue line is the student's growth. The, this is the district mean growth, and this is the norm, national norm.
So if you can point out at the bottom, right, under mathematics, they've
Mhm.
got performance by different categories. So it's gonna tell me, okay, I can't read it from here. but-
Operations and algebraic thinking. These are the same breakdowns in the last report that were there. So operations and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, number and operations, geometry.
Right. So if my child were not at the average in one of those areas, right, or there was a concern, it would show up in that. And so then it's an opportunity to have the conversation about, geez, here's some thoughts that I might have about how to work on geometry skills at home, right? Maybe it's as basic as identifying shapes as you walk around the house. Maybe it's, walking angles, helping out with measurement projects, right? Doing some of those things. So as a teacher, I'm in a position then to have a richer dialogue with a parent, and the parent is in a position to have a richer dialogue with me about how they can support their child at home.
And if there was a particular area that we were concerned about, we could also get more detail behind that we were just talking about.
Amy, I really appreciate you going through this. Commissioner Ilplut was talking about transparency on Monday when he was at school, and I thought, this is the kind of thing, that we have lots of information and we're very transparent about it. But if people don't understand how to read it,
Right.
it's no longer
Right.
transparent to them.
Well, and that is why
So I
we
appreciate
make
your
sure
point.
that especially in elementary school, that we have a time specifically when we can go over these types of reports. And all the teachers are very open to say anything that you need, please ask.
So if
And
I
I'm
were-
very open with them to say, anything you want me to help explain, I'm here.
If I were that student's parent, just looking at graphically, I'd say things are in pretty good shape here.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm supposed to walk away with.
Yes,
Both in terms of the upswing
the trajectory, yeah. Mhm.
but what I can't tell is the variable between the blue line and can't quantify.
So that
I
key
can't
on
see
the
it.
right, the key on the right
Yeah.
gives some growth projection. So I can see that the growth of this child was 25 points, but the projected growth was 12. So this child grew almost twice as much as what was expected over the course of that year. But I can also see the percentile ranges. So
That's
again,
what I
on a
can't-
normal
Oh,
norm.
So
Yeah.
it does quantify
So
it
this,
there. I
yeah,
got you.
98th percentile, 87th percentile, 91st percentile.
Gotcha.
And it gives you
Gotcha.
it's a range, because there's a
Right.
margin of error, as with any assessment
Right.
that our students participate in, but it gives you an idea of how they compare.
Gotcha. Boy, that's really cool.
And so it gives you both the math and the reading, and let me just scroll up for a second so you can see that there are groupings for the reading as well. So here we have literature, vocabulary acquisition and use, and informational text. And they also give the Lexile range, which is the number that's used to help identify where they are in the level of fluency of reading.
And this, sorry for being thick about this, but this goes to the parents?
Yes.
And does the parent understand?
The first one, in the fall, we purposefully have these available in third, fourth, and fifth grade for parents to review with the teacher during their conference, so if they have any questions. And they also know when they come home in a report card that they can review that with the teacher at any time.
Is there a correlation between a report card and this?
As far
In other
as,
words, I remember bringing home the dreaded report card. Yes, it was. But in other words, am I likely to be a A-, B+ report card, looking at that?
well, they're both based on the Common Core standards.
Yeah.
So in that way, they should be similar. And remember that every student is different as far as their ability to deal with these types of tests. And some are, for some, this is better for them because it is a computerized test. And then the things that are graded on the report card are based on things done within the classroom. And so it's just not given the same way. So there might be slight variations, and sometimes we see that a student that does not do very well with having to write something will do a lot better if they can use the computer.
Yeah, so I would say where there's a significant discrepancy between what we see here and what we see in the classroom, that's an important conversation, right? In either direction, right? Because either, boy, we're not doing something that we should be doing
Right.
to help the student demonstrate his or her full potential, or or this student is struggling with this type of assessment, and we need to think about how we're going to be able to support them in demonstrating their very best.
But that student could do very well in terms of inputting data, but not do well in classroom participation.
That's true. Now, our report cards now at the elementary level separate those work habits.
Yes.
From, like turning things in on time and,
Right.
not letting your dog eat your homework every night, right? It separates those from how you do with
Yes.
these discrete academic skills.
Right.
Really cool.
So this would be what would be called a summative assessment, and the formative would be all those things that the teacher is tracking on a daily basis, basically.
And one of the things that certainly it's important for everyone to understand is that when we give these assessments, if there are accommodations necessary, as I gave the example earlier, that if a student struggles with reading, we can't let that reading ability affect they may have a really extra strong ability in math, or vice versa. So we have to make sure that we're accommodating for those things when we give the assessments. So there are a lot of things a lot of little details that make.
This is really good, though, to see the past 4 years all come to this. Now, where you have a board that's understanding exactly what we're looking at, this, to me, just sitting here for the last 5 years, this really means a lot to me.
Great.
To see everything come together like this.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and figure out where we were.
You're moving on to the results a little bit, the trends.
Right. Mhm. Okay. Okay, so let's go to this. This is the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and I have shared this, some of this data in previous years, but this gives us a 3-year look at how we've done grades 3 through 8 with the Smarter Balanced Assessment. And I have the next slide will give you the ability to see cohorts, because I have it colored, and in fact, on your papers, you have that as well. But this gives you the number of, this is 2014-15, so I put them in order here. So the first year we took it second, and this past year. And it gives you the grade levels, the number of students that were in that grade level, and the percentage at level 3 and above. So there's 4 levels of the assessment. There's proficient with distinction, proficient. The names may be a little different for Smarter Balanced. What's in my mind right now are the ones for, what was that?
Right.
Oh, they were right. Yeah, okay. Proficient with distinction, proficient, then partially proficient, and then substantially below proficient. Those are the 4 levels. So this is giving you the top 2 levels, which are the students that are considered proficient. This, as you might remember from other discussions that we've had about this assessment, it's a rather rigorous assessment. Our students have done comparably or better than the state average in most cases. And what I've done here is giving you, this is an average score 3 through 8 to just kind of give you an anchor. If we're looking at so many scores here, and before I show you the cohort one, it kind of gives you an anchor of how we've done throughout the years. Not a tremendous variance, either up or down. A little bit up, but not a tremendous variance.
So the next one I think is helpful in,
Yes.
in showing how we can look a little more closely at the trends.
I truly wish this were a smart board so we could make it bigger.
I know. I think we're all struggling.
Yeah.
I'll ask Amy to share the presentation so we can
Yes,
send
I
you
will do
a
that.
full screen enlargeable version. Yeah, I can't see it either. Even with 2 pairs of glasses.
You know, I have to tell you, I was tempted to go back into the school building and borrow a set of magnifying glasses. But then I thought, well, you know, it'll be big up here, and as Meredith said, I can share the presentation with you so that you can see it more clearly. This is also a little unclear because I went to low tech and highlighted, and then I went back to higher tech and scanned it back to the computer, you know, so anyway. But at least it does give you an idea. It's easier to follow the colors from year to year and look at the percentages of kids that are proficient or above. It's a little easier to keep track of it.
So can you maybe just walk us through one of those for one grade level, Amy, just as an
Sure, why don't we
example?
take, 2 different levels. So let's start with the 3rd graders. The first year of the test, 57% of the kids were proficient or above. When they were in 4th grade, same, 57%. And then when they were in 5th grade, and this was reading that I'm reading to now, is 72%.
That's great.
In math, 56% first year. What is that?
One down.
Is that 57 or 67?
I think
I don't know.
Do you want to borrow these?
I think it's, no, I have the glasses, it's just, I have to, if I can go back a screen for a second, I can tell you.
Catherine, can you go?
57, it is 57. Okay. It's blurry, unfortunately. Makes me feel badly now that I see how blurry it is. Okay, so it went from 56 to 57%, and then in grade 5, 56%. So it's interesting that they basically stayed the same percentage of proficiency for that
Total number
group.
of students assessed in that group?
92, 93, 92, 95, 96.
So again, in that case, you've got fewer than 100 students. Every change in student or variable with a student certainly impacts your assessment. And these are the overall average, but there is a margin of error with these assessments as well. And so understanding that it's always within a range. So 56 to 57 is irrelevant. 57 to 72, though, is something we want to say, what was going on there that these students had so much growth that year? We want to capture that.
Right, exactly.
Spread the good news.
That's where your curriculum coordinator comes in and says, what were we doing? So that's when all of this comes together.
Exactly, and he's going to talk about that in
Right.
just a minute. And we
Yeah,
we probably, I don't want to,
yeah, no, that's fine.
so we can do this with Smarter Balance. We can also do this with NWEA. We can do this with SAT and the ACT
Right.
data. So, and we also can drill down,
sorry.
and I'm going to steal Amy's thunder and just move us through this little piece quickly, but we can also drill down to look at how are we doing with male students versus female students? How are we doing for our students with disabilities as compared to the rest of the student population? How are we doing with our English language learners? And those are really important data points for us as we work on equity in our system, because that's the work.
Why would the gender be important to see?
Because sometimes there are trends that emerge. You may see, for example, a common trend is that in nationwide, that girls tend to perform better in writing than our boys do. So we have to think about, is that a reflection on our practice? Because I don't think that inherently boys are not strong writers, right? What are we asking them to write about? If you look at the research, we often ask for a lot of narrative in our writing for students. Girls do really well in writing narrative. A lot of boys do not, right? They might be more interested in writing, an action and adventure, sci-fi, war story, right? And if we don't allow that flexibility, that it may impact their overall development as writers. So a lot to consider. So you can,
And these are the SAT results from the test of last year?
Yes. So we have, this is the overall results. And what I've done, because the last report we looked at gave you a total proficient, because these are the same, and I've got a key here again with the levels, is that this box, the brighter box I've put in, it tells you the percentage of students that showed up as proficient.
Amy, what is the score equivalent to be considered proficient? Is there such a
the
thing?
cut score, there is.
There is, and I don't know it, but I can get
I can
that for
find you
you.
the cut
Okay.
scores
Yes.
for math and ELA, or English.
When this came in, is in our Performance Plus system, because this is this school day assessment, so it's within our system. This is not the SAT report that you would normally get at home.
Right.
So what they do is they adapt it and put the levels based on the norms into the same type of leveling system that we use for our other assessments. That way you can more easily take all of the assessments in Performance Plus. I could take every assessment that the student's taken and put it in one chart and compare it, because they do that. They make it so that it's more leveled with the other assessments. Any questions about that?
You want to jump to Chris?
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Amy.
thank you very much.
How's everyone doing? Thumbs up, good?
It's great.
Middle?
quick formative assessment. So there's a quick piece I bring in there, so that's how we do it. That's right. So how does this all apply to teachers? And again, assessment, instruction, and curriculum. So every year, when we're trying to develop our goals with teachers, we're looking at what the kids have done, and then how does that drive instruction for us? And we put it into three specific categories. What's the assessments doing? What assessments are we using? Are they valid? That we talked about. So again, when we're talking about male and female, do female students take as many math classes? There's a huge push right now, right? And so are we making sure that that's happening? Is our data telling us that? We're pushing female students the same way our male students in any STEM classes. So that's something that we need to look at. The other things in assessment, so PALS, the PALS is the phonemic awareness learning screen that we use at the beginning of the year. And what does that tell us about our kids when they're coming into kindergarten? Are they ready, and is full day kindergarten doing what it's supposed to do? That comes right from our PALS data from preschool to kindergarten. And if they're not, then how are we modifying so that those kids are ready? Because we want them ready to be ready learners, ready leaders, ready readers in the end of kindergarten, starting in first grade. The junior, senior high school, looking at our school-wide rubrics. Are we using school-wide rubrics to assess kids in the same way? And so from our PE teacher to our language arts teachers, are we assessing writing the same way and using common language? And that's a huge concept. And so a lot of times people say, well, they don't write in PE. Yes, you do. You write in a different way, but you still have to be assessed in a common rubric. A rubric is a scoring guide in which you rate the kids, or you have a scoring to tell them where you're going to assess their output in regards to writing or speaking, research. We have them for all of our 21st century learning goals throughout the junior, senior high school.
So in writing, an example might be uses multiple specific cited examples to support their claim versus has one or two examples, but they could be further developed, no citations are present, right? That's the example of a rubric component.
And some really concrete ones that I used when I was teaching 4-year-olds was to look at physical development list. When they get on a tricycle, are they still scooting for the first one? Are they going back and forth and can't quite get can they get that pedal going, or are they just, and then scooting, and can they do it fast? And then can they do it fast and control the turn when they go around the corner?
So that would be the most, that would be proficient with distinction, right? Because the expectation in your case would be that they can just go in a straight line.
By the time they're 5-year-olds and going into kindergarten, they should be going around it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
And I think it's helpful for parents and community members to know that the rubrics start in elementary school. So,
Right.
so as a parent, you're used to looking at that to see what the requirements for the assignments are, and it carries yourself and the student all the way through.
So one of the pieces that we're doing, and I'll get to it again, but from the ACT writing, so we were finding that our writing scores were not where we wanted them to be. Language arts, we just picked that entire writing prompt out. So we have now come up with a writing rubric that we're going to use in all of our language arts teachers that's going to assess college and career readiness writers. Whether they're going to college or they're going to trade school or they're going to the military or they're just going to go work. We want all kids to be able to be, when they walk out of this building as Newmarket graduates, they're going to be prepared to write whether they go into any of those type of fields. That's something that we just worked on, 2 weeks ago, pulling it apart because we weren't satisfied with where our kids are at. And again, we're above the national average, but we're not satisfied here, so we're going to keep digging into it. Common assessments. Are we assessing kids in common ways? So go back to that 4th grade class that did so well. Well, was it one set of teachers? Was it 2 set of teachers? Or did they do something as a grade level that we need to put into a bottle and pass on to grade 5 or pass on below to grade 3? We've done it now with algebra. So every algebra teacher, because that's one of the areas that we have a lot of teachers, they're assessing the same thing, no matter if it's Chris Andruski class or if it's Elizabeth McKinney's class. Same way we're assessing, so that we know the standards we're teaching are being assessed the same way and that kids are not falling through the gaps, or one strong teacher is not going to be pushing all of our kids, because now it's both strong teachers. Okay? So that's what we're looking at with classes where we have those common assessments. For a much bigger district, we would say all 4th grade teachers are going to have a common assessment, which we're working on at that grade level. But there's 4 of them, and there's 10. It's a little bit different. So we're working that together. The junior, senior high school, you mostly have one teacher for that content area, so it's a little bit different. And then finally, the standardized report cards. We use it at the elementary school, and Al, you brought up a good point. If a kid is way up here, should they be getting all A's? Well, yes, but what does an A really mean, right? They should be able to demonstrate that they know all the standards on that report card. So that kid that was at that 98th percentile in math in 4th grade, they should be proficient on every single one of those standards if our reporting system
And
is
by
right.
the way, we probably should be starting to assess that child on the 5th grade math
Correct.
standards, right? Or, you know, wherever is appropriate.
Yeah, you'll start hearing us talk about more and more grade level spans, because that student in 4th grade should not be just taught in 4th grade because they're 9 years old and that's what we do in 4th grade. No, we can teach this kid who is they might be 10 years old or 11-year-old because they're at that level. That's what you're gonna hear us talk about, and you'll see that in some of the
Can you
stuff.
go back to the common assessment for a minute?
Sure.
So there are 5 algebra teachers.
Yep.
One of them, if they follow life in general, is superb. One of them isn't so good,
Mhm.
and 3 are good. I mean, that's kind of life.
Sure.
So I would assume that that you're measuring all the kids the same way, gotcha. But the issue is not the kids, the issue is the teacher.
Oh, now you're speaking my language.
So the great opportunity then, right, is to have a conversation about, you know, even growing from 57 to 72%, geez, what made the difference for these students? So it's an opportunity for the administrator who's supervising that teacher to have some rich conversation about, you know, boy, your class didn't do as well on the common assessment as these 3 other classes did.
Gotcha.
Aside from the metrics, just as an administrator or an educator, can you kind of tell?
You can, but the summative assessments tell us, far and beyond.
And then the
Tell
question
which
is, can you
part,
do
though,
anything
Mike?
about it?
Sure, so,
Instruction,
yeah.
quality of instruction?
Yeah.
So we have a scope and sequence now that we've got for 6 through 12, but we're getting it at the elementary too, right? And that scope and sequence is all the competencies that we want to teach in that class. What does it mean to be proficient in algebra when you walk out? And we should be able to tell that from our kids.
Right.
If Chris Andruski's class and I have 20 kids and all 20 are walking out and they're hitting that benchmark,
Yep.
and your class is not out, then I as an administrator, and that's what we do in this curriculum, is saying, why? Well, you're like, I didn't teach this part. Well, you needed to, because this is what they needed.
Or I'm not a very good teacher.
But we can do that through the evaluation too, but our first step is we gotta give you the tools to teach it well. Because
Gotcha.
I think we hire
Gotcha.
really good
I-
teachers, right? And it might be supports where they're falling down.
I gotcha.
And that's where I come in, that's where Meredith comes in, that's where the data manager, that's where the administrators come in to support that. Now, they might not get it, and we evaluate them that way and say, yes, maybe it's another district you need to work for. But I think we hire really good teachers, and sometimes we just gotta give them the tools to work through that.
If I can take your example one step further though, your class was great, you get all 20, you did what they had to. We're looking for something more than that, right? Are we looking for, was it follow the child? Was that the idea that you sort of assess each child and if they're, not necessarily by grade, but by ability?
Yep.
And so if you, all 20 of your students did it, but they should really have been up here, that's not necessarily a success, right? I mean,
So you're talking again about that growth piece, like
Right.
Amy showed us on that earlier chart. So a common assessment is really checking for sort of that curricular alignment. So assuming we have 5 sections of biology, is every biology class making sure all students are in the same thing? That is not the only measure of success in that classroom, because you're right. If we have pre-assessment data, which is the critical piece, that says, boy, all these kids came into biology with this level of proficiency,
Right.
because we probably could give that common assessment at the beginning of the year, right? And the end of the year, so half of them forgot everything they knew at the beginning of the year, something went wrong. So yes, it's one piece, but it's not the whole picture.
Is it also possible that if you've got this algebra 5 classes, again, mine isn't doing well, that you take, it's kind of preposterous, I guess, but you take that class that's not doing well and give it to the better teacher?
I think when we're grouping them, we never do it that way. I mean, I think we have supports in place for those kids that struggle. We have interventions, and it's built right into our schedule. We also have enrichment times built into our schedule, but we don't say, Chris Andruski's been our elite teacher, he's taken these 10 kids. Sometimes it does work out that way.
Great. I'm sorry, Al, go ahead.
I guess I was asking something differently. So it's the one great teacher and the one not-so-great teacher. Those students have suffered from poor instruction, like we all do. That's the way life is. Is it, do you think about taking that group and saying, okay, they're lagging, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put those in with a super-duper teacher to help bring that class up?
So as I think about that, I think, so first of all, we're not gonna wait till the end of the year to have that information. So we're gonna be taking steps along the way during the year to be able to make those adjustments. Because administrators are visiting classrooms, they're looking at different data points along the way, not just this end of year assessment. Because if we were waiting to do that, you're right, then we're shortchanging potentially
Right,
some kids
right.
because we're not paying attention.
Right.
And I think that goes back to Mike's earlier point, it really isn't a one-shot, it's a more holistic view. This, a common assessment really is helping us look at overall alignment of our curriculum, right? I want to be making sure that every student is getting at least this basic level of knowledge.
Yeah.
But if I, early on as an administrator, see that students in a particular classroom are not getting the best experience they should be, then it's on me to be talking to Chris or to me or to Amy and figuring out what supports we can put in place.
Gotcha.
And that might mean, we're giving that teacher some more professional development. It might mean we're giving them a mentor. It might mean we're giving them some coaching or some curricular tools and resources to be able to use. It might mean that, gosh, this group of students has a lot of needs and we need to put a second person in that classroom to provide some additional support to break down, those groups into little smaller chunks so we can provide the support that they need. I mean, there are a lot of pieces we would look at, but I would hope none of us would certainly consciously, and I think we're in classrooms enough that we're aware when those concerns arise, but none of us would consciously allow students to be in a classroom where they weren't getting a quality experience. Morally, ethically, we can't do that to kids.
It's very interesting. So I'm going to move us into like the curriculum piece. So I've talked, and I've already talked about this, the scope and sequence. It's something that by the end of this year, we will have a K-12 scope and sequence mapped out for every grade level. So and it will be, we already have 6 through 12 on our website. So you can go and see what we teach at what grade level and what the content and what's the expectation at that level. We're working at it right now in all of our early release days or PD days at the elementary school. It's a focus for this year because we can't align K to 12 if we don't have that piece to see what our gaps are. And it's been very helpful. 6 to 7, that's just what we did today in science. We had the science teachers and the 6th grade teacher saying, hey, I'm teaching this part. And the 7th grade teacher saying, well, I teach that too. The 6th grade teacher didn't need to. We were repeating some of the curriculum. Now we can focus on other areas. So that's really important in how we do our scope and sequence. We've been remodeling our curriculum, and I say remodeling because we're making it better, okay? We're updating what was, 1924 to 2017. So we're making it for that student, Al, and Mike, what you talked about, personalized learning. So kids in a class, how do we personalize it that they can demonstrate competency? It might not just be an oral test. It might be something outside the classroom. How are those things coming in so that we can assess that kids have demonstrated knowledge in our classroom a variety of ways? Depth of knowledge and competency-based education. We have a standards-based report card, but you'll hear us talking more about competencies. So competencies are those major overarching goals. Those 4 things you saw that we saw, algebraic expression, that's your competency. What are the standards to show us that the kid has that demonstration of knowledge? And then the depth of knowledge, there's a chart that we talk about, and just put it simply, level 1 is like recall, simple information. We want to get our kids to analyzing and contrasting. We want them thinking analytically. That's how sometimes our instruction can improve, because all we ask kids is recall questions. So when they take that standardized assessment, it's going to ask them, please take this paragraph and critically tell me how the author would reply to this. Well, if we don't teach it that way, our tests are going to reflect that. And that's something that we've seen out of this work as well. Again, the school-wide rubrics are there because it's not just assessments, it's also how we do it with our curriculum. Project-based learning, and again, this is coming out. This is a huge component of what's coming in, and with the new spaces that we've created in our facilities, this is going to be a huge part and something you'll be seeing more and more in all of our classrooms. And then the final piece is pushing our kids to own that learning, okay? So that's a conversation that we're having with all of our teachers. We may give it to them, but that point is they don't go home and do it. That habit to work, they're not owning their learning. They may be the smartest kid in class, but if they're not doing it outside and they don't own why they want to be here, it doesn't matter what we do. And then the final piece is our instruction piece. Again, I can statements. I can statements are so important because they assess the standards. Those standards-based report cards, when kids can come home and say, I can read, I can add 2-digit numbers. We are creating that, and that's something we started last year, and it is now K through 12. We call it a little bit different things in both buildings. But again, that we can assess the learning, and kids can own their learning because they know what's expected of them when they walk in. Common writing practice, I talked a little bit about that at the language arts, but again, at the elementary school, we haven't really had a common writing practice, and we've seen that. So why are our writing scores not great at the junior, senior high school? Because we need to focus at K through 12, not just at one specific grade level or one specific content. And that goes into our writing. And then the last two is that technology piece. Google Classroom has really boomed. And how we use Google Classroom, I know a lot of the teachers at the junior, senior high school, it's all paperless now. Everything is through Google Classroom. It's quick, it's easy, it's assessed. Thinking our 10th grade English teacher, she doesn't do anything except for Google Classroom. So everything is instantaneous work back and forth between her and her students. It's amazing. And then the last part is how we're using technology in so many different ways to communicate and demonstrate information. So those are the major things that we take at, but it all starts with our assessment, K through 12, and then this happens K through 12 of what we impact for student learning and teacher instruction.
Chris, one of the things that with Google Classroom, as transitioning from the elementary school to the junior and senior high and that whole K-12 concept, is helping the parents understand what that looks like and how to log in, and the fact that children have logins long before we know they have logins, just to make that as seamless as possible for all.
So we've talked about that. So our goal is that we will start working with parents to get them Infinite Campus logons, which goes head in head with Google Classroom, starting in kindergarten. Because we noticed that, why are we starting in 5th grade when parents are going from elementary school to 6th grade where they use it a lot? We want to start earlier. So we've talked about that districtly, and it's something that we want to do. Because you're right, if we don't show it to them, how do they support their children?
And
now
they're
it's
excellent tools to use.
right, but now it's probably the children supporting their parents, right? So again,
Well,
we
and
can
as
start earlier doing this.
And as we think about that journey into one-to-one, and we've got a couple surveys going out over the next month or so to parents and families about technology use and device needs, we're gonna have to be engaging with families in those conversations, because those are the tools that our kids are gonna be using. And, those of you with children in college know that they aren't turning in the handwritten or typed essay to their teachers anymore. All of that workflow is digital.
They don't even do, take attendance, he has a clicker.
But it's strange though, when I was writing for something, there was a difference if I hand wrote it versus typing it. I could write B more effectively when I hand wrote it.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely research about a hand-to-brain connection and that physical task. But honestly, when
For
students
me,
like
it's
Catherine.
the opposite.
You grew up on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a difference of what I
Yeah.
was introduced to. I'm much more able to get my thoughts out if I have a computer in front of me, which is interesting to see the differences between.
And by the
how I
time
started.
my elementary age daughter is at that point, she's going to be dictating everything she does. And she's going to be remembering it that way, and she's not going to be typing.
Right. Yeah. So I just want to highlight a couple things. So this year, last year, learning this role, I met with during curriculum times with each group contractually, an hour and a half at this time of the year, and then in March, I had my meetings with all the departments in curriculum. This is how we arranged that. This year, we realized we're going to do some more group instruction. So with the junior, senior high school, they want to move towards competency-based education, which aligns with our standard report cards. So we took a group last Monday. There was 11 teachers and administrators, 1 at the elementary school, and then 8 at the junior, senior high school. Myself and 2 administrators went and learned about transforming to competency-based education. We then had a workshop day in-house right here, all of us talking about how do we make this happen. And it was teacher-led. Then on last Friday in our PD day at the junior, senior high school, the teachers got up and reported out to the rest of the teachers, and they set up the whole workshop day, which was amazing. The buy-in was so much different. At the elementary school, they're working on their scope and sequence. They're working on their I can statements. They were working on Infinite Campus. They were working on all these mini workshops to address these things. we will work with the elementary school to now do that competency-based stuff, same type of model in January to get them pushing so that we're doing K-12. So you're hearing a lot of things K-12 as we go forward. With Google Classroom, we hosted a boot camp here this summer, and it was so well received. We're doing it again in March so that we will have more educators because we get free seats when we host it here. So again, we had so many teachers interested from around the area, but we got free seats to it. We're going to do it again to train more of our teachers in Google Classroom. Then we can put them in the boot camp too, because we'll have so many people here. So we get more and more knowledge by hosting here. And then as we go forward, we'll be doing more and more, group type stuff that make K-12. And to do that, Meredith, talked a little bit about, we were able to get 5 administrators into a pretty prestigious leadership academy that happens, and we go next Friday. It's Saturday, Sunday. We fly back Sunday night. Some of it's paid for NCP, but it's a competitive leadership conference. We're going to be there with people from Grand Rapids, Michigan, San Diego, California, teachers and leaders from Houston, Florida. So the good part about going there is we're going to learn more from those people who have different problems than we do in Newmarket, New Hampshire, but do have similar problems. So the leadership team is going to come back and say, okay, our eyes are open to a lot more things to be able to make these things happen in a little bit different way. So it's really neat times going on right now with how we're aligning this curriculum. So.
It really is, and this is really informative, and Amy, yours was as well. I'm just thinking, this is recorded and whatever, but is there a plan afoot to sort of have an ability for parents to come in and hear what you've
Sure.
told us?
So we've talked a lot this year as an administrative team about sort of increasing our parent outreach and engagement efforts. And I know, the board's goal is certainly communication, but there's been some planning already for some curriculum-focused nights. So that's a real opportunity to go into depth about some of these pieces within a particular curricular domain. So within reading, writing, within mathematics, to help people get a good understanding of those pieces. Chris is leading a book study with some staff right now. I am working through my short list to figure out I've done some community reads in my past life, and I love to sort of invite parents in, buy 10 or 12 copies of a book and invite parents who want to come read that and have some conversation about it. So, that's definitely another piece, and just brown bag discussion lunches or brown bag teas in the afternoon. Just an opportunity for folks to come and chat about some of these things in a little more depth. It's always hard to reach every parent, but again, I think we know folks are busy, but when something piques their interest, they're going to come, and we want to give them those opportunities.
Definitely, it's tough to reach everybody. You experience that leading up to the March, but if you get those people who will come to those things, then they can spread it. They usually.
And so many exciting things are happening that the more ways that we communicate it throughout the system benefits everybody.
Yeah, we've also looked at the website, with I know that first letter we sent out was very well received, so maybe putting some of these things into that curriculum corner, but also looking at revamping our website to have a parent resource when we talk about these things so they can go through it in a little bit greater detail. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about is how do we get this information onto our website that people can access it at their own time, because that needs to be cleaned up. So that's on our list. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I am so proud of all of you that this has all come together like this, and we can have these conversations, and we actually understand what is being said.
Starting to.
Yeah, well, that's, I sat here 5 years ago thinking, what have I got myself into? And now to see it all come together like this, and just so proud of all of you.
Exciting time.
It is.
It truly is. Again, Amy and Chris, thank you for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Back to the agenda. We are now at our action items section. And the first thing is the September 21st non-public and public minutes. I seek a motion to approve those if there are no amendments to them, or if there are, then we can vote the amendments.
So moved. Second.
And a motion from Ms. Alberg and a second from Ms. McKinney to approve the September 21st non-public and public minutes. Any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor of approving those minutes say aye.
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 Thank you, Jen.
The next we have, and I have done some crude math for the Elizabeth, can you even read my handwriting?
What am I reading that for?
Because there are several different ones, and I added them all up.
There should be a summary.
It wasn't.
It's here.
Mm-mm.
Oh, the summary's here.
Aha, see, I'll use my math to do, I don't use that, I'll check my math later.
I do that.
I haven't had
I have
some
algebra
assessment.
2, geometry, and numbers in my head.
So, I make a motion to approve the manifest dated 10/5/17 in the total amount of $1,119,472.78.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
Motion from Mr. McKinney, a second from Ms. Kinnison to approve the manifests in the amount of $1,119,472.78.
Good job, Mr.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All
Which is
approved.
why I can't read the numbers.
All right, send that down to Jen so she has the data that she needs. All right, the next thing, again, we have, and they've been mentioned a couple of times already, some grants received by the Newmarket, received to the district from the Newmarket Community Educational Partnership. Again, we are grateful for this partnership and the work that they do at various degrees in our school. And as Assistant Superintendent Abdrisky said, they helped with the grant for your leadership program, correct? In this case, we have $3,186.15, various things, cameras and cooking supplies for a language and social development program, Courageous Principal program, an artist in residence for photography, Eleanor Branch, and a small engine repair club. As we can see, a lot of students are being touched in a lot of different ways in our district, and we are sincerely grateful for these donations, but given the amount, the total amount of $3,186.15, we need to, I seek a motion to approve the acceptance of those.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Kinnison to approve, not to remove, approve the donations from NCEP in the amount of $3,186.15.
And does anybody know the date for the NECP Eats?
That's November 9th.
November 9th. Thank you.
Oh, so we might want to think about that budget date.
Yes, we need to.
I forgot about that. Thank you.
I forgot, yes, Newmarket Eats is a great
Everyone
event.
come.
We will be there.
They'll be babysitting there. They'll be, again, this is the third one they've done.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah, it's a great time. If anybody wants to come, I forget the price of the tickets. I want to say,
I had
yeah,
that.
it's
25.
about.
I think it's 25,
I think so.
and it's more at the door. So
Yes,
buy ahead.
If you buy ahead.
Excellent event at the Mills, a great community event, and a great organization. I'll repeat the.
November 9th.
Jen, did
We have not.
vote? We have not voted. Let me repeat the.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was-
We'll repeat the motion. A motion to accept the donations from NCEP in the amount of $3,186.15. The motion was made by Ms. McKinney, seconded by Mr. Kinnison. All those in favor of approving these generous donations?
Aye.
Approved. For the school board members, the employee handbook was on your table.
Yes.
There's still some reviewing going on with this, and Meredith might talk about this a little more, but, so we'll just take this now to review it, and we'll discuss it further next time.
Yeah, it's intended as a first read for tonight. We weren't able to review it with all of our partners, and we want to make sure that's happened. So it's a first read, and we'll bring it back to you for a subsequent meeting.
Does the employee handbook cover all employees?
It does, and it did not historically, so this has been a rework of some previously existing documents to try to consolidate those things that apply to all employees with some carve-outs for particular classifications.
Right, and those carve-outs, I've started to go through it. They're going to be
Sure.
identified.
Yes, so I
So
mean,
that-
those are, so the general pieces, right? So benefits, right, for food service workers are subscribed, attached to their work agreement as a single-page benefits sheet. So the handbook is much broader and talks about the general things that apply to everybody in the district, and then those specific benefits are identified on a benefit.
So things like vacation schedules.
Yeah.
For all employees, based on years of service, are going to be included in the employee handbook.
No, because not every employee group has vacations.
For those that do.
So they're on their benefits sheet. so the benefits sheet that accompanies their work agreement.
But how do we as a board, how can we look at,
We can certainly provide those to you.
yeah,
Those
and why would
benefits
they not
sheets.
be part of the employee handbook?
Because they don't apply to all employees, and the intention was to create a handbook that covered those pieces that apply to everyone. In my experience, it's not typical to give everybody benefits information to every other group, right? We don't hand out the administrative contracts to every group, and they're not captured in the employee handbook. Those are voted upon by the board and shared with that person's agreement.
They're not universal, they're peculiar.
Correct.
So,
So some folks work, so if I as an employee want to find information quickly and easily, the employee handbook is the best resource, except if it relates to my individual benefits. And then I have that addendum piece that accompanies my work agreement that spells out particular pieces for me. What we had before was about a 50-page agreement that was so convoluted, or employee handbook that was so convoluted that it was difficult to find information.
I guess my question is, things like holiday pay, those are consistent? The holidays we pay employees for every year?
So different groups of employees get different numbers of holidays.
Really?
Yep, because some people work year-round, some people
Well, I
only work
understand-
school
I
year,
understand that, but
so.
people in the same classification, if there were 13, how many holidays do we have, 13 and a half? or
12.
Whatever the heck it is, between a non-exempt employee here and a non-exempt employee there, we would assume that they would be the same? Or do different, full-time non-exempt employees get different benefits from one another?
Again, in part, that depends on whether they are working a 184-day
No, no, no,
contract or a
full-ti-
200.
Full-time, non-exempt employee.
We don't have very many of them. I don't know.
Part-time, my
Right.
question is, if you look at a classification, I want to make sure that they're being.
So again, I'm happy to bring you those benefit sheets. That was part of the conversation that the board had in the spring, and we adopted those practices based on our dialogue with you the end of last school year, before we rolled that out to employees in April or May. And so, yes, we certainly can bring you those sheets if the board would like to take a look at them. But for my piece, putting them in the employee handbook is overly complex, because it isn't, if I'm a food service employee, do I look at, well, I only work 184 days, but these are benefits, and I only work 4 hours a day, but these benefits are for people who work 7 hours a day, but who work 200 days. It just was too many layers of
I
information.
understand, and I'm not trying to be difficult.
No.
But if we have a part-time employee that's working 30 hours a week and is non-exempt, my assumption would be that those true 30-hour employees that are non-exempt are being treated consistently relative to their benefits. That we don't say, you get 10 days vacation and you get 3, and you get 13 vacation.
So we do have, based on years of experience within our classification groups, right, our custodians in the first number of years get a certain number of vacation days. Then after so many years of service, they gain additional vacation days. So we do have some of that.
I don't,
but,
this,
it's grades of it, but I mean, if you have the same employees, what you're saying is it's consistent with the same.
Right, if two
Right.
custodians both have 4 years of service in the district, and they both work 30 hours a week, they're getting the same number of vacation days. Yes, absolutely.
and just to flip your mind around it differently, in my school system, teachers did not have vacation days.
Correct.
Teachers had 190 duty days.
Oh, and I
in there.
get it with.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we had 10 days that were paid sick leave days that we could accumulate over time if we didn't use them. And because we had no vacation days, if something came up, like when I had to take my daughter to school, 3 of those 10 days I could use in that calendar year. Not in another calendar year, I couldn't carry them over, but I could use those 3 days to make sure that my daughter was in her college year when I was gonna be half a world away after that point. But I could only use those 3 days. And our administrators were on a 220-day calendar. And if that meant that during what would be Christmas vacation or winter vacation for our teachers and our students, if our administrators wanted to be at home with their families, they had to take leave days.
Okay.
Or they had to shift the 220 days that they worked to sometime later in the summer. So sometimes it's a different way of thinking about the calendar. So we will review the handbook again at the next meeting.
The last section of our agenda is personnel matters. And Meredith, we have a request for a leave for a teacher.
Correct, it's a child
Martin Luther King Day.
leave, so
And those
that
are-
is a
those are-
shall
those were-
under the bargaining agreement, and so we would ask the board to approve that request.
I would make the motion to approve that request.
Second that motion.
On a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr.
Kennison.
Kennison, if I can think of it. This is when I start to
What
lose my
happens.
words. It's past my bedtime. Mr. Kennison to approve the leave that was just discussed by Superintendent Nato. All those, any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
And just, we are almost to the point of completing our meeting. I heard from the beginning of the meeting, there's a building committee meeting on the 18th, is that correct?
That is correct.
So that'll be the next one there. Our next school board meeting is the next night, October 19th, and then there's a subsequent building committee meeting on November 1st, and that might be the one, Meredith, that we think about having a joint meeting.
That's correct, and whether it's that one or whether we need to schedule another one in
Subsequent date.
November, we'll let you know that.
Okay. And we will also get a tentative date scheduled out of the budget stuff so that
Correct.
people can get the November dates on their calendars as soon as possible.
And it sounds like I will take November 9th
Yes, take
off
it
of
off.
the
Take
calendar.
it off.
And if necessary, what we could do for, the board meets already on November 16th, so if necessary, we could do a budget workshop before or after that
Okay.
meeting.
That's a good plan.
Well, we could do it early.
So the 9th is off.
We're all gonna be here.
The 9th is off.
Yeah, we're gonna go
I
to
think it's
Newmarket East.
5.
All right, if there's nothing else, I seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I have one
Yes, Al.
non-agenda item. A couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, we got a huge stack of policies.
Yes.
And in the spirit of technology and living like we're in the 21st century, the town council has switched completely over to laptops now. And I think we ought to think about it. I mean, this is part of what we're supposed to be standing for, and we're walking in with 8 trees.
Nothing would make us happier.
Well, I think we need to, it was a tough transition with the town council, people didn't like it. But I can't remember how much it was, Kim, but it was $150
I think we can definitely look, Meredith, I will charge you to work with Lisa to come up with, you know,
Yeah, I mean, so for example, the device that we have invested the most heavily within the district are Chromebooks, and Chromebooks would allow you to access a shared site where we could put those documents so that you could have ready access and open them through your
during the
mail.
meeting, we don't have to,
And be able to review during the
Maybe
meeting.
we could do it at the same time we're looking at the one-to-one for the, starting with freshmen, maybe, right? Let that.
I mean, I think it's definitely something we need to, because we do run through a large amount of paper.
almost embarrassing.
And
Our copiers would prefer it as well, and our paper budget.
Yeah, can't you I just bought an Android for my boat to use for the nav system, and it was a big one. And it was like $180. I mean, is
Yeah,
that the kind of number?
So we certainly can look at some other device options. Again, Chromebook is one that we're already supporting pretty heavily in the district,
I
which
just
makes
didn't
some
know how
economic
expensive
sense.
they
But
were. Yeah,
I would
yeah.
ask Jason to weigh in, but they're about $250, including chargers and whatnot. So that's certainly something we can can look
Why
at
don't we,
for the
why don't
board.
we add that to the next agenda for the October 18th meeting, no, 19th? And maybe we can do a presentation on that.
Okay.
I
That would be
did, I
exciting.
Thank
used to
you,
use
Al.
my iPad.
Hmm?
I used to use my iPad when I first came. I like checking things off, I guess
I know, boy,
I
I'm
know.
telling you, talk about an old guy in the room, but I actually got used to it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that suggestion, Al, and we'll address it at the next meeting.
When I was going through the 125 pages, I didn't know how I'd find them on here, so I was writing notes on the page.
I mean, again, if you do that math, that's almost 2 reams of
Yes.
paper, correct?
Exactly,
You know?
exactly. I mean,
For one meeting.
196 that.
It was,
You did
I
it
remember you,
twice.
I remember you walking in the door, it was like you were holding a child.
Thank you. Anything else that anyone has? And then I seek a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
And a motion from Ms. McKinney and a second from Mr. Kinnison. I move to adjourn the meeting at 9:22 PM. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
This one have to be struck out.
Thank you.